Hello, everybody. So today I'm going to be looking at Princess Diana and Prince Harry. I'm going to be looking at what killed or why Princess Diana died, and also whether or not Prince Harry is her son, and what's going on with him being disowned or removed from the royal family. So I'm going to start with the start. So my first knowledge of Princess Diana, of course, was when she was Lady Diana and she was engaged to be um, to become princess and then effectively in line to become the Queen. She was engaged to who was then Prince Charles, and he, of course, is now King Charles III. So he did become king. And had they stayed married and had she not died, because they didn't divorce, well, they were about to divorce, or actually, I think they did divorce, but then she died anyway. No, she did divorce. They did divorce. But had they not divorced, had she not died, she would have been queen, and Camilla would not have been. Now, it goes without saying that Diana was a much more popular princess than Camilla. A lot of English people, if you asked them, certainly at the time, but most now, if they had a choice, they'd say we'd much rather have Diana as our queen. And I think the same goes with people here in Australia who are under the English crown. So she would have been our queen. She was our princess. So that's kind of a big point of it. Is you see, she was a lady, and so the way it works and it's not just the English royal family, but most royal families, so they're required to marry another prince or princess. So Prince Charles was required by law in order to become a king, he had to marry a princess. Now, it didn't really matter which monarchy he married from, but there's only so many monarchies around at the moment. So most countries have turned to democracy or communism, or they've got a dictatorship or something like that. There's very few active monarchies. Now, of course, there is still Norway, there's Sweden, Denmark, I think Morocco, and there's a few others. Saudi Arabia, although that's not called King and Queen. There's Brunei, there's a few others. So he had a choice of all those different places, probably a few others that I can't think of right now. I'm sure there's a list somewhere. List of monarchies, 43. So I'll just read out the list. So you have Andorra, Antigua and Barbuda. Oh no, they're under Charles. So Andorra is separate. Um, Bahrain. Um, oh no, they're not. Belgium. Yeah, Belize. Oh no, that's under England. Bhutan. Well, Brunei. I said before. Cambodia. Denmark. I'd said before. Eswatini. Um, Japan has an emperor. There's Jordan, Kuwait, Lesotho, Liechtenstein, although that's got a prince. Luxembourg has a Grand Duke. Malaysia, I'm not sure if that counts. Monaco has a prince. There's Morocco, I've said before. Netherlands, I missed that one. Norway, I said before. Oman, Qatar, I'd said Saudi Arabia. Spain, forgot that one. Thailand, Tonga, oh no, that's not the same. Um, yeah, that's it. So there's a few options. And if you look at it, you have those options and you're sort of 42, but then a lot of them are under Charles at the time that he married, they were under his mother, Elizabeth II. So there weren't that many options. And I didn't look at the list of princesses who were available in 1980 or 1981, but there would have been a small number. Now, traditionally, he would have been allowed to marry any kind of princess, so anyone that was descended from any throne. Now, of course, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky because, and each monarchy is a little bit different, but after a certain number of places, after, in line for the throne, they stop being princes and princesses and get other lesser titles. So I think in England it's 15. maybe it might be 20, and then they just sort of say, "Oh, if you're any further in line for the throne than the 15th or the 20th or whatever, then you get another title. You could be a duchess, you could be royal." And some of the ones that are higher up lose their princess status. So Princess Anne, for example, who's Charles's sister, she's Princess Royal, so she's not a proper princess. So it, it gets a bit tricky. But so anyone that's within those levels, even if they're not necessarily an active princess, could still marry Charles. And it wouldn't matter if they were a European princess or an African or an Asian princess. And of course, they're the only countries that have them. South America doesn't have them. North America doesn't have them. Australia doesn't have them. So you'd be looking at Europe, Africa, or Asia. And I just want to highlight this. It never actually mattered which nationality they were. It never really did. So it would be perfectly acceptable for a prince, such as Prince Charles was and now Prince William, to marry an African princess as long as she was a bona fide, genuine princess. Now, of course, under the old rules, you wouldn't be allowed to marry someone that you're at war with and so forth, because so there'd have to be an alliance of sorts, or sometimes a marriage was a part of that alliance. So you might have next in line for the throne from your side, and then two or three levels down for the princess. That could be a part of that alliance. So marrying someone that's a princess was always very important. Now, if you couldn't do that, or you didn't want to, you could do it internally. And internally, you would normally look at the next level down, which are generally your lords and ladies. And it does get a bit complicated because those terms don't always mean what they're supposed to mean. And then you've got duchesses and you've got all sorts of weird different things. But you generally have to have someone that's pretty upper class. Now, you could only marry them if they were within your own monarchy, within your own country. Although with England, could be Barbados because that's part of the country. So if you had somebody that was from Barbados, for example, or Antigua and Barbuda, how do you say it? And that's within the British monarchy, and they were a lady, you could marry them. You could marry them from Papua New Guinea, that's within the monarchy. So they could be a lower class, but you couldn't really have that lower caste from somewhere else. So, for example, you couldn't go to, say, Thailand and get a lady from there because that wouldn't be acceptable. So there's all these rules about who they're allowed to marry. And suffice to say that Diana was allowed. Thumbs up. She was Lady Diana. Lady Diana of England. So she's the next level down, but it was okay because she was a lady and she's within that country. If she'd been a Lady Diana of Spain, not allowed to marry her. Sorry. So that needs to be highlighted because she had to be at that level. Now, there was some talk that her family were elevated to make it acceptable, but anyway, suffice to say, she was acceptable. Now, this is really important because, as we know now, Charles actually wanted to marry Camilla, and Camilla, who he did eventually marry, and he's married to now, and she's the queen. She was not of a high enough caste. Now, she wasn't lower caste, she wasn't a commoner, but she wasn't high enough to marry the person that would be king. She could marry Prince, like Prince Andrew, for example, but she couldn't marry King Charles because he was next in line for the throne. Prince Andrew was a few levels down, so she wasn't allowed to. And this is really important because they both wanted to marry each other. We know that now. And I think, well, not everyone knew that at the time, but certainly later on we found out. We worked it out. We were told it wasn't true, but it was pretty obviously true. So they wanted to marry each other, but instead Charles was told, no, you're not allowed to marry Camilla. You have to marry Diana because she is the right type. Now, he probably had other options. I'm sure there was a princess of Morocco running around, or Tuvalu, or whatever those countries were that I listed and now I've forgotten. There were probably other ones going around, but of course their families have to agree and so forth, and it does get a little bit complicated. Now, India, of course, have a whole system, and then the British were involved for a while. They're not really anymore, but they even have princesses of Nigeria. There are actual ones, not just the ones that pretend they are. But yeah. So suffice to say, she was acceptable, Diana was, Camilla was not. So Camilla went off and married somebody else, and Charles married someone else. Well, he married Diana. So they got married, and the thing is, at the time, so 1981, this was possibly the biggest wedding in world history. And I don't think there's ever been a bigger one. Now you can say, oh well, this one by some celebrity might have been more expensive, but this one of Diana and Charles was on for like 16 hours with live coverage. Now I don't think the wedding itself was quite that long, but it was pretty amazing. And you had billions of people watching it live. You can get videos of it. You can get DVDs. You can get. I'm sure you could look at YouTube and you would have hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And the other thing is, and I've seen some documentaries, she actually lost a bit of weight. I didn't see her before she lost that weight, but after she lost that weight, she was quite possibly the most beautiful woman in the world. Now, I don't think I need to tell you that's not normal for princes and princesses. They're not normally the most beautiful people in the world. Now, occasionally there are beautiful ones, but usually they get luxurious, they get fat, they get ugly, they get not the best looking. And that's not really a factor in them being a king or queen. So Diana being so gorgeous, and she was not just, oh, okay, she's decent looking. I mean, if you look at Kate Middleton or Catherine Middleton, who's William's wife, and Princess Kate, or Princess Catherine, um, and she's very good looking. She was not considered to be, at any stage, the best looking woman in the world. Diana was. So, and I mean, no disrespect to Catherine, but Diana was probably better looking by a fairly big margin. And it was shocking to people. And what came from that was that because she wasn't a princess, a lot of people said, "Well, you're a gold digger." So she was described as a gold digger because if you want to understand the life of a queen, as she would eventually become, and we didn't know when Elizabeth was going to die. We didn't know it was going to be when Charles was 75. A lot of people thought, well, it could happen when he's 35, 40. And the idea that, you could have this young woman, 30 years old, with, as far as we were concerned, no real qualifications. Okay, she was a lady, but they had to sort of manipulate that. And she was just beautiful. That was it. And people were thinking, well, she's a gold digger. She was going to become one of the most powerful people in the world, and going to have unimaginable wealth. And all she had going for her was that she was pretty. So to say she was hated is an understatement. You really need to understand that. I know a lot of people today think, oh, everybody loved Diana. That was actually not the case to start with. A lot of people, and a lot of people still to this day, consider her to be a gold digger, that she didn't deserve the position. So when she came in there and she had this glorious wedding and looked absolutely amazing, for a lot of people that made it worse. She was this gold digger. She was someone that manipulated her way into the position. She just looked beautiful. They may as well have called her a prostitute for all that, all of that sort of thing. So, and then of course we had the thing, she became pregnant, and sort of the attitude changed, and William was born, and a lot of people started to think of her as decent because once she'd had a baby, particularly since it was a boy, succession is assured. Now, of course, had she not had children, then it'd go to his brother and so forth. And of course, at that stage, and I know they changed it later on, but at that stage it had to be a male heir. Now, later on, they changed it to be that it would be either, that it could be a female heir. And so at the moment, had she given birth to a daughter, it would have been okay. This is a bit overdue. Um, this is from King Henry VIII, really, where he kept having daughters and, yeah, kept killing people because they wouldn't give him sons. But anyway, about 500 years too late on that one. But anyway, so yeah, so had a son, made it easy, and of course he looked like Charles. He still does look like Charles. If you look at him, he's a went bald a bit quicker, but otherwise a lot of his looks are like Charles, and a lot of the other looks are Diana. So he's pretty obviously between them. And that was all fine. Everybody was really happy, and she was doing charity work, and oh, she was going over to Africa, and everybody just loved her. And was it that she was beautiful? Was it that she put up with all the nonsense that people were saying about her, or just she's just a genuinely nice person. So people were very critical of her, like I said, but then they warmed up to her. A lot of people that are young now might not realise how much animosity she had against her, and then we warmed up to her. And then Harry was born, and Harry's birth undid all the good things, or a lot of the good things that she did with all the charity work and with William's birth. And the reason is that Harry doesn't look like Charles. He didn't when he was born. He doesn't now. And I'm not just saying his red hair, his face, his body, everything looks like he's not related to Charles. And that was noticed straight away. And as soon as that happened, people were like, oh my God, Diana was having an affair. Now, of course, there was no evidence for that. Um, but yeah, it was, um, yeah, so there was, yeah, there were a lot of speculations that she was having an affair. And so we had Harry, and there were a lot of denials, and the palace were in a lot of damage control, and they were saying, no, 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 no. There's Spencer Red, that his mother's family do have red hair going back a bit. Okay, okay. But isn't red hair recessive? Doesn't that mean that you need to have both sides red hair? One side has a bit of red hair somewhere. Shouldn't that mean that there's no red hair? Am I missing something? Does Harry's side have red hair? No. So even if her side does have a little bit, it still shouldn't have red hair. And he's got shocking red hair. He's got very red hair. So that means the father has to have red hair. No. So Harry was born, and we were all fine, and we just all forgot about it. And so he was born in, what was it, 1984. So fairly early on. William, of course, was born in, now I'll just double check, 1982. So no, she married 82, 81, William in 82, Harry in 84. So we go, okay. So a bit later, she eventually had a divorce. Now, the divorce happened, um, so 1996, but actually, when she was separated, so 1996, so she was married for 15 years. Now, in 1995, so while she was separated from Charles, she gave an interview with a guy called, what was his name? Bashir, uh, Martin Bashir, who's some kind of journalist. And in that interview, she admitted to affairs. Now, she admitted to three. Now, I'll just see if I can check who the ones were. But yeah, she said she had postnatal depression, and she said that Charles had been with Camilla Parker Bowles, who he's now married to, the whole time. Now, she said that one of the people she had an affair with was a guy called, now, I'll have to get the names right. So there was James Hewitt. He's not the one with red hair. Oh, yes, he is. Yes. So one of the names that she had an affair with was James Hewitt. So I think that's the one that people were like, oh, you've got red hair. Harry's got red hair. You had an affair with him. But there were others as well. And this is the thing. So James Hewitt was one of the people that was close to the royal family. Um, so yeah, he said he had an affair from 86 to 91. Now Harry was born in 84. So we're meant to believe that. So I'll just get the timeline right. Diana got married to Charles in 81, had William in 82, had Harry in 84, started having an affair with a redhead guy in 86. Okay, so he's not Harry's father. It was a 2 year gap. Harry was born, then they started having a 5 year affair. And he happens to have shocking red hair and looks a lot like Harry. There's a 2 year gap. Plus, got to be conceived for 3 years. She would have had to have started seeing him in about 83, not 86. Therefore, it's fine. Now, of course, she admitted to 3 affairs. Now, it was widely speculated at the time that she'd actually had about 7 or 8. So it wasn't just James Hewitt, there were other options as well. And it's usually when you admit to a little bit, you're actually doing a bit more. Now, Charles, of course, said no, he was not seeing Camilla Parker Bowles. The whole family said that's not true. They've since admitted to it. But admitted to having the affair while they were married. They just said, well, they were having an affair before he was married, then they stopped it, then they got divorced, and then they started the affair again. Again, he's admitted to a bit, he probably did a bit more. I'm just going to say, I think probably Charles was seeing Camilla the whole way through, at least most of the way through. And look, maybe that wasn't a pure sexual relationship. Maybe there was just a lot of "I love you," hugs, all that sort of stuff. I mean, Diana's saying, "Oh, there was 3 people in the relationship," and saying Camilla was the third, and saying that Diana didn't really matter. It does seem consistent with what we found out after she died. And you've got to realise she gave this interview in 1995, then had the divorce in 96, and then died in 97. So, was it 97 she died? Yeah, it was. It was 97. So she gave the interview in 95. So we've got to say, all right, just remember, married 81, William gave birth to William in 82, gave birth to Harry in 84, started seeing redhead guy in 86, stopped seeing redhead guy in 91, divorced, sorry, separated in 95 and gave that interview, divorced in 96, died in 97. So you got to realise that the royal family did not care if um, Charles had an affair. Couldn't give a shit. He's the prince. He's allowed to. That was not the scandal. The scandal was that this tramp, this Diana, had had an affair with at least 3 men, and who knows how many, while married to him, and might have even had a baby with one of them, and that could be Prince Harry. Now, as far as the palace is concerned, that was the scandal. They didn't care about Charles seeing someone. Who cares? He's allowed. I mean, so many kings have had a million mistresses. Who cares? If the Queen they're allowed to have people on the side. They do not care. That was not the scandal. The scandal was Diana having affairs. That's terrible to start with. She's not the one that's in line for the throne. If she was in line for the throne, she's allowed to have affairs. She was not the one in line for the throne. That was a scandal. They wanted to kill her over that. Let's not mince words. They wanted to kill her. And when I say they, I mean not any one particular person, although obviously Queen Elizabeth II was the leader of them, but the whole royal family, the whole palace, all the supporters of the royal family, they all wanted her to die. And they were afraid that she would confirm that Harry was born from a different father to Charles, because that would be the scandal to beat all scandals. Now, she denied it. Thank God for that. But there was a fear she was going to reveal it. So they didn't want the divorce to go ahead. The divorce happened. And then they didn't want her to get married to someone else or to move. Now, she got engaged to a guy. Um, who was it? It was. Um, let's see if I can find the guy. She was. Uh, yeah, can't find him. Anyway, she was engaged to this guy, and I think he was Egyptian. And yeah, yeah, it was. Yeah, it's not going to turn up. Yeah, engaged. Yeah, so it's come. Yeah. Well, anyway, so she was engaged to this guy. He was like he was in yeah, I think Egypt, I believe. Muhammad, here you go. Dodi Fayed. So he's Egyptian. So he was a film producer. He wasn't part of the royal family or anything like that. So And he had money from the Harrods department store. And look, him being Arabic, Egyptian, Muslim, nobody cared. But the issue was that when she married him, she would move to Egypt and be with him. And when she moved to Egypt, she would have a lot of protection because it's wealthy and all that protection from his people. So that means that they couldn't kill Diana. They couldn't keep her, couldn't threaten to kill her. They couldn't say, "You tell anyone about Harry and we will kill you." No, she would be protected. She'd be free to say those terrible words that they never wanted to hear, which is, "Harry is not my son. He's not Charles's son." And if she officially, even unofficially, said Harry is James Hewitt's son or somebody else, could have been someone else, wouldn't really matter whose it was. It's not if it's anyone but Charles's. Firstly, obviously, Harry would be removed from the royal family. Now they might want to check that. They would they would probably just quietly remove him. They'd say, "Oh no, he is," but then remove him anyway. So the idea that she was killed now, it doesn't necessarily mean that Queen Elizabeth II said, "Hello, would you please be able to kill Diana? Put some spike his drink to put some alcohol in it, please." No, not necessarily that, but it could be even that somebody did it because everyone knew that they wanted to kill Diana, and there were a lot of people, even outside of the royal family, who would just they knew that they needed her to die, and there was a strong suspicion that Harry was not Charles's son. Well, he was obviously Diana's son, but not Charles's, and and that's the problem that if he's not Charles's son, anyone who knew that or suspected it wanted her to die. She was shaming the royal family, and they all wanted her to die. It was well known. So if you were someone that liked the royal family and thought that she was a tramp, that she was a gold digger, that she was ruining the royal family or whatever, and you probably got 20 million people who wanted her to die. So you didn't need an order from Queen Elizabeth II. Now, you might have had one. You might not have. You might have had it from a minder, from someone up there, or you might have just had somebody that just wanted her to die. The idea that the driver would be drunk. I just need to explain this. Okay. First of all, drunk driving does happen. People die every year, lots of them, hundreds of them. And so if you're a regular driver, you're a regular person, and you just get drunk one day, or you're an alcoholic or whatever, yeah, that can happen. But if you're working and your job is to be a driver, you're not very likely to be drunk. Now, okay, truck drivers will often take drugs to keep them awake, and they might get drunk. Fair enough, but they're not driving people; they're driving goods. If you're driving people, the chances of you being drunk are much lower than as a truck driver who's just driving stuff. There's nobody to look at you. So if you think you can drive safely with stuff in the back, fine. You may well get drunk. Now you shouldn't. You're not allowed to, but some do. So taxi drivers are less likely to get drunk than truck drivers. Train drivers are less likely to get drunk. They're not going to get drunk. It has happened. Limo drivers, driving celebrities, very unlikely to get drunk. Not necessarily celebrities, but yeah, then you get the ones that private drivers for celebrities. They're never going to get drunk. And then Princess Diana was not just an ordinary celebrity. She was right up there. She was probably in the top 5 or 6 most important celebrities in the world at the time. So the idea that you would have someone just casually getting drunk is preposterous. If he was someone that he was an alcoholic, she would have fired him, but she would have found out a long time ago. If he was someone that just got drunk once, there'd be hints for it. There'd be people looking at him. So the idea that he would just be randomly drunk is ridiculous. Now nobody ever investigated, not officially. Unofficially they have, and they've pretty much proven that she was assassinated by getting the driver drunk. Now, I don't think he was regularly drunk. He was probably just had his orange juice spiked, and it might have come into effect later on, or drugged, or whatever happened. So suffice to say that she was killed. Now, the reason to kill her was Prince Harry. Now, that doesn't itself prove that Prince Harry is not Charles's son. But let's now look at what happened afterwards. So, after that, Harry, of course, met a person called Meghan Markle. Now, I've already explained about how you're not allowed to marry people that are not the right status, but that didn't apply to Harry. Harry could marry whoever he wanted, pretty much. I mean, if you're not in line for the throne, as he realistically wasn't, as soon as William got married, had children, Harry's no chance. Now, had William not got married, had William not had children, Harry was a chance. But that had already happened. And so Harry was free to marry whoever he wanted. So he married Meghan Markle. Now, Meghan Markle, I've got to be honest here, American, USA does not have a monarchy. So that's a problem. She was divorced. That's a problem. Her being black, again, not a problem. Because they were allowed to marry black people as long as they were monarchs, as long as they were rich. So essentially, she would have had to, like, they didn't like her being American, they didn't like her being divorced, they didn't like that she wasn't high enough status. And I mean, she'd say, oh, she was a celebrity. Really? I don't think anyone knew who she was. She was in Mad Men, and I think she held some cases on what's that show? Um, Deal or No Deal or whatever it was, or something like that. And it's like, what the hell? It's not a household name, you know. So if you were going to look at a celebrity to be a high enough status, they'd have to be right up there. They'd have to be someone like a Nicki Minaj. Now, I think if Nicki Minaj married a low royal such as Harry, and by low royal I mean he's still fairly high up, um, but he's never going to be king. If it had been Nicki Minaj, I think people would have accepted a lot more. If it had been Beyonce, she's a pretty big celebrity, and people call her Queen Bee. That'd be okay. Even Madonna would be okay. I mean, it's a bit old, but you know. So I think that having someone like them, or Kim Kardashian, or someone that's considered to be a big name celebrity would be okay. But Meghan Markle was very low level. Yeah, she did have a little bit of money. And she says, oh, it was her being African American that's the problem. Well, first of all, her father was white. Her mother had African American heritage. Um, so she's like a quarter African American. I know you're not supposed to say a quarter, but that was around about what she was, which is fair enough. But that was not the factor. It was that she was American. An American is a problem because they don't have a monarchy and also they rebelled against the monarchy. So Americans are basically off limits to marry a royal family. Like I would be more likely to be accepted to marry a royal family being in Australia than she would be as an American. So Australia is part of the British Commonwealth. I'm not a lord, but you know, I'd be more acceptable. So she was unacceptable for a number of reasons, and then of course she came in and then she said the bit about, and I believe it was Princess Anne, who said, "Oh, wonder what race or what color the baby will look like." Oh, terrible. Well, actually, a lot of people have said, actually, that's not that terrible. A lot of black people have said, you speculate about the color. I mean, you got people of different nationalities and they marry and they have a child. You always speculate as to what the child's going to look like. They're going to take after one or after the other or somewhere in between or something different. And I think that was a reasonable thing to say. And she made a big deal about that on Oprah. But the thing is, that didn't really upset the royal family. They didn't care. It wasn't a big deal. And if you compare that with the scandal with Diana having an affair with three men, or at least three, and possibly Harry being born from one of those three men, or might have been more than three, you compare that to Meghan Markle having a baby that might be a bit darker skinned, and he wasn't, by the way, he was quite light skinned. Um, if you compare that, that's a nothing story. That's a nothing burger. She apparently upset Princess Catherine, but who cares? I mean, it's nothing. It was a nothing story. The idea, and he was disowned. So Harry has been quietly removed from the royal tree. the royal family, he's not listed on their website. He's not in line for the throne anymore. So now, no matter how many people died, he cannot become king. Now, that also happened to Prince Andrew after Andrew was involved in the Jeffrey Epstein Island thing. We don't know to what level, but the evidence against him was pretty strong, we'll just say. And so that happened to Andrew, and it happened to Harry. Now, it happened to Andrew because he was involved with Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know the level, but I'd say there was a lot more evidence against Andrew than there was against either Donald Trump or Bill Clinton. A lot more. And it was enough that they just wanted to quietly remove it. Fair enough. And at about the same time, they quietly removed Harry. Now, I think it happened after Elizabeth died, Queen Elizabeth II, and it might have been just before. But I don't think it had anything to do with Meghan Markle. I'd say Charles said, well, enough is enough. He's not my son. Let's remove him. And maybe, yeah, his behaviour, or at least Meghan Markle's, was sort of pushing the limits where they're saying, well, but you're not even my son. What are you doing? So, look, I'd say the chances are Charles is not Harry's son. Charles is not Harry's father. Harry is not Charles's son. And I'd say that Princess Diana was killed, perhaps not on direct orders from Queen Elizabeth II, but related to that. It could well have been people doing it by themselves. I'd say that she was murdered. I'd say absolutely. And I'd say it was covered up with the whole blaming the paparazzi thing, um, which I believed at the time. I believed, so I wasn't really looking at things at the time, but blaming the paparazzi, I thought, oh, paparazzi, terrible people. Terrible paparazzi, terrible photographers going around hounding people. Um, and it's almost like that was the cover story, so that we didn't look at what was actually going on. So we looked at, oh, it's either paparazzi or it's nothing. But and I often talk about there being a third story, because once you go, oh, it wasn't paparazzi, you go, oh, it was nothing. But there's this other story going on that says, oh, someone murdered her. But we weren't given that option. So, oh, paparazzi, nothing. Hey, did somebody assassinate? Paparazzi or nothing. If you think it's not paparazzi, then it was nothing. It's natural causes. Natural causes. She just died in a horrible car accident. Can happen to anyone. People die in car accidents all the time. People have to get drunk all the time. These things happen. Not when that's your job as a driver. I mean, I suppose it's possible, but yeah, chances are she was murdered. And a lot of people were saying, not just afterwards, but at the time and before that, they wanted to murder her. I mean, she gave those revelations in 95. She died in 97. It's 2 years later. I mean, it's like when I look at Hansi Cronje from the cricket, and he admitted to match fixing and then suddenly died, but not long afterwards, and like this massive scandal. Yeah, so he's pretty likely he was killed. You know, yeah, I haven't even looked at that one, but you have to say you put the things together and you go, hmm. And there was that guy from Wagner who tried to um, assassinate Vladimir Putin, and then suddenly he's dead. Yeah, probably a coincidence. Yeah, no, just fell out of a window. Just bad luck. No. And also, I just want to say this on the side. The Jeffrey Epstein thing, and people say, well, it was either Hillary Clinton trying to protect her husband Bill, or it was Donald Trump. He was the president at the time. Jeffrey Epstein just died. Queen Elizabeth II had more motive and more opportunity. Andrew did. Andrew actually did something. I don't think Bill Clinton or Donald Trump did anything. They might have been associated with the wrong person, but there's no real evidence that they did anything. It pretty much is for Prince Andrew. And I mean, I don't know specifics, but he was removed from the royal family. I'd say they killed him. Again, they wanted Jeffrey Epstein dead. Not necessarily, hello, would you please kill Jeffrey Epstein? No, it'd be more of an understanding, more of a, we know that we need this person to die to protect the Queen and to protect the palace and protect the royal family. And yeah, I'd say it's very, very likely that Jeffrey Epstein was killed related to Prince Andrew and the royal family. It was like, oh, we'll get rid of your accuser, you will stay free, but you will no longer be a part of the royal family. Deal. That'd be the situation. But that doesn't prove that he did anything. Um, just proves that they didn't want the scandal. So yeah, look, I'd say yeah, Harry is not Charles's son, um, but of course he'd still be allowed to be a lord, so still from his mother's side, still have something. But yeah, and James Hewitt, like he was like a lord or something at that level as well, somewhere around there. So and it could might have been someone else that was the father. I, I'm I don't think that they would be so crass as to do a DNA test, but I dare say they know. And I would guess that that is the situation. For legal reasons, these are not accusations. I'm not making anyone. This is just me spitballing, me just having an opinion, and I'm allowed to have an opinion, and opinion's always true because they're opinions. They're not facts. I'm not stating this as fact, but no one's going to believe me anyway. This is just me guessing, me speculating. So, yeah. And I mean, it's quite normal for kings and queens to order assassinations. These things happen all the time. So, it used to be a lot more public, but it's not quite as public anymore, although sometimes it is. Um, I think there'd be a reason to keep it quiet for both of them because they were close to the royal family. Princess Diana would be very, very sensitive. They wouldn't want anyone to know about that one. And I think even Jeffrey Epstein, they would not want people to know. So they would keep those two a pretty big secret, and there'd be good reasons to keep it a secret. Is there a chance I'm wrong? Yes, of course. I could be wrong. I'm just speculating about those three things and a few other things as well. We can, you know. Anyway, that's it for me. Bye bye now.